The badly decomposed body of 3-month-old Joshua Anderson was found hidden in the ceiling of a Mayfield house in February 1992 after his parents had moved out. The cause of his death was never determined. His father, Stephen Carr, was sentenced to 2 years jail for concealing the body. His mother, Alison Anderson, charged with being an accessory after the fact. Today, after almost a year of investigations by Detective Senior Constable Rob Robertson, the inquest into Joshua's death was reopened in Newcastle Court. Detective Robertson told of a conversation he had with Stephen Carr while he was an inmate at Junee Jail. When Detective Robertson asked Carr if he killed Joshua, Detective Robertson said Carr replied, "No, I loved him." Detective Robertson said Carr told him he'd seen Alison Anderson leaning over a double bed which Joshua was lying on. He said Joshua was face down in a pillow and it looked like he'd been pushed into it. Detective Robertson said to Carr, "Do you think that Alison killed Joshua?" Carr allegedly replied, "Yes." Evidence was also given by 3 corrective service officers from Junee Jail who told of phone conversations between Anderson and Carr, the contents of which were suppressed by the court. Coroner Col Elliott also ordered that the identity of other witnesses not be published. Their evidence related to conversations they had with Carr and Anderson concerning the cause and circumstances of Joshua's death. The inquest will resume later this month. Jodie McKay, NBN News.
Last week, the group of disgruntled staff stopped work for an hour while they voiced their concerns. Today they met twice with an industrial officer to plan their next move.
The university has to come up with some sort of offer which makes up some part of that 12% that we've fallen behind so far.
Ron Hunter knows firsthand what it's been like as he's struggled to pay off his mortgage and bills.
Staff in higher education have had no substantial increase for 3-4 years, and as a result, with inflation running at in excess of 5%, of course people are finding it very difficult to meet their commitments.
The group says morale is so low, it's not just staff themselves who are being affected, but also their families and the quality of education. It's for this reason members say they won't settle for anything less than more money. Late today, the group made a joint resolution to call on the uni to provide an increase of 10% based on productivity increases already achieved. They want this backdated to July and paid immediately, and then they will seek an additional 2% increase. University Deputy Vice-Chancellor Professor Keith Lester declined to comment. Heather Stewart, NBN News. Student painter Melanie Sullivan was struggling to make ends meet while she completed a graduate diploma in arts at the University of Newcastle. Today she was one of 3 students whose talent and need was noticed by the interview panel of the William Fletcher Grant Scheme. Along with visual arts student Bernadette Verschelden and illustrator Joanne Olshier, Melanie received $1,000 to assist her studies. And federal government grants totalling $665,000 will give the University of Newcastle a head start on improving research facilities and raising some to world-class standard. $75,000 will be put towards keyboard studies in music with the aim of updating piano technology. The university's Professor Ron MacDonald says the funds will help create a strong research base for students.
The people who are going to benefit will be the academic staff and the research students. And of course, we're very proud of our research record in Newcastle, and this will enhance that record.
Heather Stewart, NBN News.
They're world, Australian and state champions, and they are all from the Hunter. Of the 10 Greater Olympic 2000 Youth Fund winners, 3 have secured their third straight scholarship, including Australian hockey representative Shelley Andrews, Australian softball member Natalie Ward and tennis player Trudy Musgrave. The 19-year-old is ranked number 1 junior in Australia and 6th in the world after reaching the semi-finals of the US junior singles.
Yeah, it helps a lot. It's been really good for especially travels within Australia, and it helps me to keep going on with my sport from Newcastle.
17-year-old Nicole Hackett is a first-time winner, with strong performances in triathlon after switching from surf lifesaving. She'll tackle the National Triathlon Grand Prix Series this year after winning the national and state under-17 titles, but her ambitions don't stop there.
Well, to become world champion and hopefully make it to the Olympics and do well at the Olympics.
Other winners included Christy Baker for basketball, Alison Daly for hockey, Josephine Fowley for athletics and Jane Taylor for tennis. Marathon swimmer Joseph Mitchell was one of 2 males, along with kayaker Peter Scott. Richard O'Leary, NBN News. The Breakers have to bounce back after an unlucky loss against the Melbourne Knights. But that won't be their only problem as they head to Victoria's Latrobe Valley.
It's a long way down there. We're chartering a flight, so it'll be a new experience for all of the guys. We're going on a 19-seater, so I think there's going to be a few white-knuckle jobs.
Cosmina may be the one with the white knuckles as he tries to choose between Damien Brown and the super sub Glenn Sprod.
I'm still tossing up whether to start Glenn Sprod in place of Damien Brown, and I'll make a decision on that either tonight or on the plane down tomorrow. Jason Bennett, obviously, he's out. He's got a rib cartilage problem, not to mention his German measles and the flu and just about every other disease known to man that he's got.
The squad reads Carter in the goals, Lowe as captain, with Sprod and Brown bracketed in the forwards, with one to be omitted. The Breakers' cause has been helped with the omission of former teammate Warren Spink, who's on national duties. But the Falcons are far from being a one-man team.
It's a guy that I'm very impressed with that either plays central midfield or plays up front for them, a boy by the name of Brian Bothwell. Very, very good player. He's tough, he's quick, he's good on the ball. And of course Ernie Tapai, a player that has played overseas and is a player with Socceroo experience, I should say. And Ernie's playing quite well for them as well.
Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
It was a tense situation both for the hostage and the police involved in the exercise. Twice a year, the officers of the Newcastle section of the State Protection Support Unit run a 3-day course to develop the techniques in dealing with a siege. It's believed these skills may be called upon for the 2000 Olympics. In this scenario at a house in Singleton, a 37-year-old man had taken a hostage, threatening to shoot him. Heavily armed officers wearing special protective jackets and helmets contained the situation, and negotiators moved in to try and talk the gunman out.
That's our aim all the way through. Negotiate, negotiate, negotiate.
For hours, the officers waited for a resolution both on the scene and at the operations centre. A profile of the gunman was worked out and plans made for the appropriate response. According to the script, the gunman meant business, threatening on several occasions to shoot his hostage. Paramedics were on standby, but after countless discussions, the gunman finally agreed to release his victim.
Prepared to surrender. Prepare the hostage reception plan.
With the hostage out and safe, all that was needed now was to talk the gunman out, with the officers not taking any chances. While this was just a training exercise, the reality is this is a common scene. The squad has been called out about twice a month to a dangerous siege.
We certainly see that there is a need for the conciliation side to conflict resolution.
400 students of Muswellbrook High have gone through the Project Restart course.
Muswellbrook will have the most students trained in CPR, at least in New South Wales, if not Australia, at this point in time.
Volunteers from Neighbourhood First Aid ran the course teaching basic CPR skills that will save lives. The school sees it as a vital part of their students' education.
We're all here for the same purpose, which is to make the town a better place. And whether it be the ABCs or the 1, 2, 3s or learning how to restart a heart or a lung.
30,000 people have been prompted by Project Restart to learn CPR, but the job won't be complete until everybody knows the life-saving skill. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
If you've ever entered a building and got an attack of the sneezes, this man is your cure. Dr Peter Dingle from Murdoch University in Perth specialises in finding the cause. He's an acclaimed air quality expert who says buildings make people sick. Visiting Newcastle, he passed on a few tips of his trade, and his message was simple.
We need to clean for health, no longer for aesthetics. We need to look and read the labels on containers that we take in. We need to be aware of the paints and the varnishes. We need to move across to some of the safer ones.
He was impressed at Newcastle's response to his advice and forward thinking.
It's the first council, it's the first major organisation anywhere around Australia, as far as I know, who started to address the situation, to increase the awareness and think about how they're actually going to solve this in terms of long term.
And according to Newcastle's environmental management planners, there's common sense in his approach.
I'm sure there's a lot of sick buildings in this town that need a bit of help. So what we'd like to do is raise the issue and make people more aware. And it seems from what he's told us so far there's many simple solutions.
And for those at home, the tip is don't just clean when the mother-in-law is visiting. Use good cleaning practices to get rid of dust and moisture. That's the perfect breeding ground for bacteria. Heather Stewart, NBN News. An early rising crowd gathered for the annual Mile Coast Prawn Festival. The Grand Parade lived up to its name, proudly led by the grandest of prawns. The community rallied to get this year's event up and running after a number of major sponsors withdrew support. Celebrating the much sought after and tasty Mile prawn, the festival has drawn crowds for 11 years.
Nothing like a good prawn. Yeah, it's lots of fun. Sitting down by the river on an old log and having a feed of prawns goes a long way with a lot of people.
Generally, visitors were impressed. However, some differed on the most important question.
Do you like a good prawn?
Yes, not one, heaps of them.
No, I don't like seafood.
Whatever the preference, most agree the festival is a great family occasion.
The new Donnelly Avenue office means unemployed people in the Toronto area have quicker access to CES and employment assistance services. Job centre officers, case managers and employer services staff are now settling in. Once the job cards are up and the word is out, the Toronto office will operate in tandem with the Cardiff CES to help get the area working.
CES is an integral part of a community on both the job seeker and employer side, and I think by placing the office here in Toronto, we will participate strongly in the development of West Lakes.
Meanwhile, another important shift at Lake Macquarie, the Department of Social Security has moved house from its old highway shopfront to new premises around the corner in Charlestown Road. The new layout aims at making service more personalised and private. The office currently serves 30,000 customers in the East Lakes area, overseeing a weekly turnover of more than $5 million in benefits and pensions.
The Port of Newcastle is bristling with radio and tracking equipment waiting to fight off the stranglehold of mine warfare. So far, a forward support headquarters has been established to pave the way for more than 200 personnel, including US Navy clearance divers. 7 of the Royal Australian Navy's mine countermeasure ships will arrive in Newcastle later this week. As well as sweeps off the coast, divers will be dropped from helicopters within the port to clear shipping channels. The Navy will also deploy remotely controlled drone boats in mine clearing operations. The exercise will be conducted over 2 weeks. Andrew Lobb, NBN News.
There's no doubting the support for the Socceroos, with fans queuing for autographs at the team's first training session at Breakers Stadium. It's predicted 8,000 people will cram into the ground on Wednesday to watch an Australian team that boasts no foreign-based players. But Captain Paul Wade is confident the record older players and the new blood can match it with the Kiwis.
Blood will be shed on this ground, and now after the result on the weekend there was a few very, very ordinary tackles going in, so I mean with everything at stake in this 90 minutes you can expect blood for sure.
Socceroos coach Eddie Thompson says he's happy about the 0-0 draw with New Zealand, as the Kiwis were coming off a 2-2 draw with South American champions Uruguay. But there will still be wholesale changes to the Socceroos in a bid to win the Trans-Tasman Series.
Jason Petkovic will come in, Trimboli will come in, probably Spiteri, Matthew Bingley. We'll be making 4 or 5 changes for sure.
And a rare treat for Northern soccer fans with the women's national team also in Newcastle. The squad's preparing for the World Cup in 1999, but has called for a women's national league to help Australia move into the top 6 in the world.
There is the rumour that there is going to be a national league for women. I think that's the next step, that we really do need a good weekend competition where you have the top players playing, so hopefully that comes about.
Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
Called the QuickLink card, it looks like a key card, but it has a built-in computer chip and operates like the EFTPOS system. The card was demonstrated in Newcastle today. Once the amount of money is keyed into the microchip, it can then be used for small purchases such as petrol, drinks or the newspaper. It has a minimum of $5 and a maximum of $500, and the promoters claim it is set to revolutionise the way we shop.
It's going to mean convenience. The card is the convenience card of the future.
The QuickLink card has been hailed as a huge success overseas.
This concept has been introduced into Belgium. It's been running in Belgium most of this year. The same system that we're using here in Australia has been introduced into Switzerland, into Holland and now here.
The system will be trialled in Newcastle over the next 6 months. Amanda Bolger, NBN News.
For Ian Bonnet, the move from International Business Chief Executive Officer to Knights Administrative Caretaker was a little like diving out of the frying pan into the fire. Mr Bonnet took on the job in July to replace Brad Mellon, whose resignation followed the defection of 3 other officials to Super League.
To us, it's just business as usual. I mean, sure, we understand there's a competitor in town, and we have to face that as we go along. We're not scared of the fact that we've got a competitor.
Today, the Knights made it official with Mr Bonnet signed on for 2 years as Chief Executive Officer. From the battering and bloodletting of the Super League incursion, the Knights have learnt to build on their strengths. And in another appointment, popular player Steve Crowe has been made liaison officer between players and the administration.
Well, the team's very stable and finished on a very high note last year. We had a reserve grade premiership, first grade finishing equal third. Fourth. So, I mean, there we can build on that and just go forward from that. I mean, I know the coaching staff and the off-field staff and the general administration staff are very confident that we will do whatever's necessary next year to be a success.
Receiving approval for the upgrade of its Bullaroo smelter has been a long process for Pasminco, but after countless sittings of a commission of inquiry, the company has finally been given the go-ahead. The announcement made today in Sydney by Planning Minister Craig Knowles.
The project represents $41 million of direct investment for the state and the Hunter region. This massive capital injection means 1,350 new jobs in the Hunter within 3 years.
Under the expansion, Pasminco will increase its production of zinc by 20,000 tonnes a year. The company says the plant will be made more efficient and competitive, and its environmental performance will greatly improve. But that's something the government is making sure of by attaching 63 strict controls on the company.
The conditions are extremely stringent. We accept that as appropriate to this operation. The WHO standards that have been applied are not applied to any other industry in the country.
As well as meeting World Health goals for the amount of lead and sulphur in the air, Pasminco must also stop storing slag on site and reduce noise pollution. But the most difficult condition the company has to meet relates to Cockle Creek. By the year 2000, the company must stop discharging contaminated material into the waterway, and that includes stormwater. Planning for the expansion is well underway. Building work will begin during a planned shutdown in August 1997 and will be completed by the turn of the century. Jodie McKay, NBN News.
The plight of the Hunters homeless was recognised by the Samaritans today at Newcastle's Anglican Cathedral. Organisers say they hope to raise $95,000 in this year's Christmas appeal. The funds will help those who have no one else to turn to celebrate Christmas with a hearty meal and gifts. But the Samaritans realise life isn't just tough for the homeless at Christmas, and that's why the organisation has also launched a service that will provide year-long support for individuals who have special needs. Brett Sorby says as a youth worker, he knows how much a service like this will help.
At the moment, the homelessness is a big issue, obviously, politically, coming up to an election, but the real story is there's lives out there. There's young people who are struggling.
Heather Stewart, NBN News.
It wasn't an ideal preparation for the Breakers last night, with several players being treated by physiotherapist Regina Larard. Most concerns centred around veteran captain David Lowe, who needed additional attention today for a hamstring problem sustained in the loss against Morwell.
Probably takes a little bit longer to recover, I think, than when you're younger. But no, I mean, I've had a couple of hamstring injuries. I always tell everybody it's because it happens to quick players, but I don't know if that's right or not.
The 32-year-old has been an invaluable part of the Breakers as he eases the younger players through their debut season.
Yeah, well, I think that's probably, one of my roles there, as well as hopefully scoring a few goals. That's the idea, just to settle things down a little bit.
His experience will be called upon in the game against Adelaide, with Socceroos hero Damien Morey backing up at Breakers Stadium after Wednesday's Trans-Tasman game.
Well, probably Damien Morey's their biggest danger man. He's the leading scorer in the league so far, and he scored the other night for Australia. He's very quick and very strong, and he was right up there with the leading scorers last year, so he's the obvious danger.
Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
The Middle East might be a long way from the world's traditional motorsport centres, but it seems there's no shortage of courage and cash, and that's a combination that ensures some very fast cars are taken to their limit. In the outright class, the fight for honours is a tussle between four-wheel drive Celicas, Subarus, Gallants and Ford Cosworths. Australian Ron Cremin drives for a local Peugeot team in the Formula 2 class for front-wheel drive under 2-litre cars, where the competition is just as fierce even if the cars are a bit slower in outright speed. His win wasn't without drama. A puddle of oil under his car, not a good sign, even in this oil-rich country.
We've got a major oil leak coming out of the gearbox, drive shaft somewhere, we're not really sure, but it's pouring gearbox oil out.
Frantic repairs put the problem right, and Cremin finished 8 minutes ahead of his nearest competition. Rated the toughest event in the Middle East Series this year, the Qatar Rally saw only 18 of the 52 starters make it to the finish. Jim Sullivan, NBN News.
The $2 million terminal will be used to keep 3 Boral gas trucks on the road, delivering in excess of 10,000 tonnes of gas a year to Taree in the north, Scone in the west and the Hawkesbury. The company says it's money well spent.
Well, unfortunately, LPG terminals don't come cheap. The equipment we use is particularly expensive. It represents 2 100-tonne vessels and all the pipework and compressors and equipment that sits in this terminal.
At the opening of the site today, visitors inspected the new capital and saw the latest safety technology in action. Boral executives say now the terminal has been completed, additional storage will be set up at the site. The aim is to increase the company's market share by providing competitively priced gas for consumers. Heather Stewart, NBN News. The mild conditions were perfect for a day out at Closebourne, the historic property established in 1817. Inside, the fuchsias were prolific. Hundreds of people langled their way through the pot plants, some to buy, others just to appreciate. Outside, the craft stalls were also doing a roaring trade. Even the vintage cars added to the atmosphere, but the fuchsias really were the centre of attention. Reverend Neil Sorber didn't waste words describing why they are his favourite flower.
It's a love affair with a plant. Every fuchsia is different and has to be thought about and dealt with differently.
Funds raised today will go towards re-establishment of Closebourne's historic gardens. Heather Stewart, NBN News.